The Heed the Call podcast is 1 month away from the draft. And something else.
Sufficiently ominous. Welcome to Heed the Call with Dan Hanzus and, wait for it, Conor Orr. Hey, Con Man, we got Sessler on a mysterious vacation, but we got you here. And yeah, we're 1 month away from the NFL draft. How about that?
Is Mark go on anything but mysterious vacations?
I'm just relieved this isn't the last couple of years. He's been going on these March, early spring, late winter cruises out into an unforgiving ocean in non-cruise season, and then he comes back and he's like, "Oh, it was a nightmare. The seas were rocky and the boat was in danger." And I'm like, "Well, stop doing it." So this time he's not on the seas. So let's just take that as the positive, and that Mark will be back next Monday, and we're very happy he got some time away, and we'll try to leave him alone for this week.
For sure.
So it's you and me, bud. I like this. This is going to be fun. And coming up later, interesting kind of crossover, your other partner in the podcast game, Breer of Sports Illustrated, is going to join us, and we're going to talk about the latest NFL news, and that's going to be fun too. How's that going to go, you think?
Yeah, you break out the upside down pineapples, and we have ourselves a little swingers party. You know,
is that what this is? I was not aware. This podcast got even more ominous and disturbing. But I'm feeling good. Yeah, the draft. Yeah, it's coming up, and we're gonna have, obviously, as we get closer and closer, continue to hit that. We're gonna talk a little bit of a draft, and with Bert, we're also going to take a look right now at the latest mock drafts from people that are industry tastemakers. Let's call them that. So let's throw them up. I'm going to go through all three, and good job here by the Gravedigger putting this together. We have, and this is, by the way, Connor, Justin's very hot about this. He's brought it up like 4 times on our text thread that he wants to, I don't know if this is his term, and it's pretty good. He wants to call it mock madness. Is that original IP? Because that's kind of the key here.
Well, so here's the problem with all this. Like, I was at a family party yesterday, and I was vaguely following the coming together of this show via the document and via the text. And I kept saying mock madness, and we're looking at the mocks and madness. And then I was like, Mike, do I have to talk about my Final Four bracket? Is this what's happening here? And then because I just kept phasing in and out, shows how much kind of show prep I'm doing at this point. But so I don't love it, but that's just because I was confused. So, and that could be something different.
All right. Well, listen, has nothing to do with the real March Madness. And Justin, is this original IP, this title? Because that will really matter whether we go down this road going forward.
It's a great question. I need to do a little more research. I may have seen it somewhere. Like to me in my brain, I did come up with it, but that doesn't mean I wasn't influenced by something I saw somewhere else. But yeah, definitely, obviously, time of year. It's March. March Madness is ongoing. Mock drafts. The mock drafts get crazier and crazier the deeper into March we get, because people need to shake things up, to
crazier,
stir up clicks, and then so like the beginning of March mocks are somewhat probably close to what we'll see, and then like mid-end March mocks are just like madness, Jackson Dart going in the top 3.
Got it.
And then as we get closer and closer to the draft again, it comes back around to like, oh, this is more or less what we're actually going to see.
When I first got to SI, I did a podcast with Breer and Jenny Vrentis, and we would have a mock draft competition, and I had a scoring system. But the way that our editors laid out the mock draft, you did it by seniority. And so I went at whatever it was, the last week of March. Jenny went in the middle of April, and Albert's was always the day before the draft. And so by the time the day before the draft comes, I'm not slighting Albert, but you kind of know where a lot of this is going to go, or Albert knows, because Albert's gotten a longer time to report it. And here I have some Jagoff that's going in the 6th round, getting picked number 4 overall by the Bears. And I just get completely blown out of the water. And we were buying bottles of wine for this one. So it was not, it wasn't free of consequence.
I know the timeline doesn't line up, but I just picture Connor just stewing about this and like sitting in his TNC in some remote area of the county he lives in, overlooking the town with just that ominous synthesizer underneath him as he grips the steering wheel so tight that he leaves finger marks. All right, let's take a look at these mocks.
I haven't seen a ton of just Googled mock madness, and I haven't seen anyone else using.
Surprising.
All right, that is our IP then. Heed the call IP. And if anybody else uses it, you're f***ed. You hear us? That's a threat. That's a physical threat of violence. I don't even know if that's illegal. Is that illegal? I don't know. Here are the mocks. Mock Madness, trademark. Heed the call. We'll take a look at Jeremiah, our old buddy, if you want to call him that, over at NFL Media, Mel Kiper, the stalwart at ESPN. And then our dudes, Josh and Hayden, who do awesome work. I'll wait for it. You know, Justin has the ding ready when we mention the Titans podcast that he does, but he's got that finger on the trigger for that. Josh and Hayden, who right now, you know, obviously they're the fantasy experts for most of the year, but then they shift into draft experts during this time of year, and legitimate draft experts. These guys are tape dogs, so we're going to look at their draft here too. But here we go. Jeremiah, Kiper, and our guys all have Cam Ward going number 1 to the Titans. Justin, I know that you are, and we're just looking at the top 10 for now because let's not go crazy, but I know you're very high on Ward, and this is a good sign that the tastemakers all have him there. Good for you, buddy, if this is how it plays out.
Yeah, I think it's starting to become clearer and clearer. Cam Ward's pro day was yesterday, Miami's entire pro day, but Cam Ward was the star there. Interviews on NFL Network, people are talking about him. So we are all in, all aboard for Cam Ward. I am conducting the Cam Tram. All right, I'm done. Go ahead.
All right, good for you.
Cam Tram.
At number 2, they're all right now in lockstep. Connor on Abdul Carter from Penn State. And there would be some head scratching, I guess, just because they just gave all the money in the world to Myles Garrett. But if Carter is the prospect that everyone seems to think, I guess you can't go wrong if he's a can't miss dude.
No, I mean, you're collapsing both edges now, and you start to build something reminiscent of like that first 49ers defense, the first one with Robert Saleh that lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, where you're just instantly destroying an offensive line and ruining things for the quarterback. So I think that probably was part of the plan that appealed to Myles Garrett, is like, hey, you're going to see single coverage a little bit more. You're not going to be double teamed on every snap. And, you know, that might've been more appealing to him than whatever they're going to do at quarterback. So
yeah, things start to get a little less chalky right now with these 3 mocks. At the Giants, who are in a very interesting spot. We're going to get to the quarterback move they made in the news in just a couple of minutes, but Kiper and Jeremiah have Shedeur Sanders from Colorado going there as their QB1 or QB of the future. You have Josh and Hayden leaning towards Travis Hunter.
So happy they did this.
Yeah, the dynamic wide receiver cornerback talent. We're going to talk about Travis Hunter with Breer in a little bit. So you have that. And then at the 4th pick, the Patriots, who again are still, and we're going to talk about the Patriots and someone that met with them in just a couple of minutes, they still need help on offense. They need it on the line. They need it at wide receiver. Probably the safest bet in the draft right now, Connor and Justin, is the Patriots either going offensive line or wide receiver. And Jeremiah has Hunter, and Kiper has Hunter, and Josh and Hayden have LSU tackle Will Campbell going, so they're in the same area there.
I debated how to express my doubt that the Giants will take Shedeur Sanders, and so I would like to put some skin in the game here. I thought of multiple ways to do this, and it's a bit hacky, right? But my least favorite fruit in the world is olives, and I will eat a jar of olives on this show if the Giants take Shedeur Sanders. I am that confident that I don't think that they're going to take Shedeur Sanders. I don't think they should take Shedeur Sanders, and we can connect them drafting Travis Hunter to my love of my newfound love of a player that they recently signed when we talk about that later. So
okay, yeah, and I'm with you. I'm not going to eat a jar of olives, but please make note of that, Justin, so we don't forget. If it does happen, these mocks, I'm guessing Jeremiah and Kiper came before the Winston news that we'll get to. I totally can see them doubling up with veterans in that quarterback room, and that would save you from olives. Just a couple more spots here. You look
Before you go on, Dan, real quick, just wanted to mention that Josh and Hayden actually don't have Shedeur Sanders in their top 10 at all, which is a little controversial. at this point in time.
I'm with them fully.
But yeah, that's based on their tape study, and Hayden Winks particularly has been going hard on this, that he would grade Shedeur as a second-round talent. Yes. And the fact that he's being mocked at, some people have him going second to the Browns. Obviously, none of these three do right now. But just there's a lot of interesting perspectives on where Shedeur is going to end up going in this draft.
I agree with them fully.
Very interesting. Yeah, a running back going in the first round doesn't happen a lot anymore. Going in the top 10, even more rare. But we got both Jeremiah and Kuiper have Boise State running back Ashton Jeanty going to the Raiders at 6. Josh and Hayden, who, by the way, have a new mock coming out this week, so be on the lookout for that. They have him taken a wide receiver, and Justin's going to pronounce his first name for me.
Well, nobody calls him Teteora. We just call him Tet. Tet McMillan.
Tet McMillan. I'm down with that. Yeah. I'm down with that as well. Elsewhere, they have the Jets taking an offensive lineman or a tight end. Someone tell me about this Tyler Warren. I'm hearing big pop about the Penn State tight end here, and the Jets have had a hole in that spot really since Dustin Keller was a playmaker 15 years ago. So Tyler Warren, get me excited.
I loved him. I loved him in the college football playoff. I think he can do a lot. I think he's one of those guys that, and this used to be a great point that Wes used to make about tight ends truly being of ultimate value to younger quarterbacks or developing quarterbacks. But Warren is one of those guys that can find the ball, that can line up at multiple positions, and then can get you the yards after catch. Maybe not, I think maybe like a Dustin Keller plus in that I really think he's going to be everywhere in an offense. And as we've seen with the 49ers and someone like Kyle Juszczyk, you can put him in so many places that you can start to dictate the personnel that the defense puts on the field, which is why I think Tyler Warren is super exciting to me.
Lance's airline comped him to Jeremy Shockey, play style-wise.
Is that good or bad? Shockey was a good player. He's kind of a lunatic, right?
Shockey sans 3 vodka tonics. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. A less boozy Jeremy Shockey. That sounds pretty good to me. The last thing I want to note is in the bottom of the top 10 here, Josh and Hayden in their most recent one that's out have Jeanty, the running back, going to the Bears at 10. You want to win the draft. You want to get people excited. People already get, the Bears for the second straight year are hype bunnies. Adding Jeanty to that offense, that would absolutely get people pumped up. So, we'll follow along as we, again, 1 month. I don't know what's going on with that ominous synth in the Zumwalt Open. I'm a little concerned about it. But in 1 month, the draft goes, yeah. I don't know what that's about, but let's keep an eye on it. All right, let's do some news.
It doesn't matter what happened in the past, and no one really cares about the future. Reality we are where we are, but where are we trying to go? What are we willing to do to be the best that we can be today? I'm with you. I got your back. So be thinking. Actually, don't think. Be the best that you can be today, together. All right, man?
That is sometimes backup quarterback and future scared straight youth minister Jameis Winston in the Browns huddle at some point in the past season. We knew Jameis was going to come out of this offseason with a new gig, and it is indeed with the New York Giants, who announced Friday that he has agreed to sign with Big Blue. The deal is 2 years for $8, which is pretty standard backup money for a veteran like Winston, a former number 1 pick who obviously has bounced around the league now. Winston added this tweet: start spreading the news with the W capitalized and then an apple for the Big Apple. And, we have reached the Winston stage where he's a brand master. He's branding himself in ways that are fun, like the W, the eating of the W. He could be a fun quarterback to watch, and he adds another piece to that Giants quarterback room. Is it the final piece? Probably not. Now it's Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets, and Jameis Winston. And at the very least, it's kind of an entertaining 1-2 punch right there, Connor.
Yeah. And I think I connected my Pepe Sylvia board here over the weekend when I was thinking about Jameis. I was thinking about the draft. Travis Hunter at 3. Let's say you get Russell Wilson and you pair him with Jameis Winston. 2 quarterbacks who are largely unreliable, but 2 of your best go ball throwers in the NFL. Jameis Winston when he was with Sean Payton was pretty solid in structure. And then we next saw him with Cleveland, who by the time Jameis was starting games wasn't really trying to win. And so I don't know how much they really cared about cutting out the routes that he didn't like to throw, all that kind of stuff. But what's interesting to me is that Travis Hunter is one of the best contested catch go ball receivers that we've seen like this century. He had a 10% better contested catch rate than Drake London, who was the next highest that we've had in this modern draft era. And what's interesting is Shedeur underthrows balls more than almost any other like top rated quarterback that we've had. So here you have this opportunity where you don't have a lot of other options. Aaron Rodgers said no. Matt Stafford said no. Your defense kind of sucks. Your offensive line isn't good. What do you have? You have Malik Neighbors, and you maybe have Travis Hunter, and you have two quarterbacks, if you sign Russell, who can push the ball down the field. It's almost like an NBA team that is devoid of talent, and you just start running and shooting, like full court pressing. And I kind of love it. Like, I talked myself into it over the weekend where it's not great. And let me get ahead of the people who are like, Connor talks about backup quarterbacks like they're Matt Stafford. No, I don't. This is not great. It's not good that they're in this situation. But if you were Joe Shane and Brian Dable and everything else has failed around you, trying to put up like 5 touchdowns and 5 picks a game is better than just sitting on your hands, is it not?
Yes. I don't know if there's reporting out there that Aaron Rodgers said no. It could be that Rodgers said no to them and they pivoted. Yeah. Or they decided we're not going to be in the Rodgers waiting game when we feel like we're probably not his first choice anyway, if they read the tea leaves.
I mean, there's third choice, right?
Right.
Because he's still kind of, I would guess there's probably a sliver of him that's hoping that J.J. McCarthy looks terrible in spring ball and he can go to Minnesota.
Right. It's very possible. So whatever it was, this seems like obviously the Giants giving up on the Rodgers dream after they gave up on the Stafford dream, and now it's a settle. I mean, Winston is a settle, and
Sure.
and Russell Wilson will be a settle. I think what's interesting about the dynamic between those two players, if that's how their depth chart sorts out, if Russell Wilson does, and I've been saying it for weeks and weeks on the show, that nothing makes more sense for the Giants and the management and the way they comport themselves as an organization that late period Russell Wilson ends up on this team. It just connects, the dots connect. They're very different quarterbacks at this stage. Yes, Russ has the reputation. He throws a sexy deep ball and all that, but he's also run some of the most boring offenses in the league the last couple of years. So you would have him and then waiting behind him, and it's almost a perfect spot for Winston. It's going to be hard for Dable and Shane if this offense ran behind Wilson and it starts to sputter. It's like, we got this guy that's instant oatmeal for us, good and bad, but is going to bring the juice. So if that's how that quarterback room shakes out, as a Giants fan, I'm not pumped about it, but I'm also like, okay, we're not winning the Super Bowl this year, but if we can get a couple of guys that have a lot of experience, professional guys in there, and you put them with Dable and a core of some young, exciting pieces on the core of that Giants team, maybe we could be competitive and be working towards something. So solid. I think the Giants and the Jets have both landed in places where it's like, okay, we see where the plan is at quarterback for the New York teams, but Giants aren't done yet. I don't think so.
No, I liken it to like I was watching the tournament this weekend, and the coach at Bryant, I think his dad was like the legendary St. Joe's coach, Phil Martelli Jr. or whatever. He coaches at Bryant, and they were playing Michigan State in the first round, and they just started the game just launching threes because you're like, what difference does it make? We're going to lose 90% of the time. So why don't we just come out, like, especially for the Giants, why don't you just come out firing the ball downfield? At the very least, it lightens the box. It takes some pressure off of that god-awful offensive line. And maybe a couple of things bounce your way and you win 7, 8, 9 games, but it's fun. It's fun. And it's like for the first time since 2010, it's an enjoyable watch. I mean, good for them.
That one Danny Dimes year, there was some excitement in the building.
True, yeah.
But otherwise, it's been pretty grim since that second win over the Patriots. Other news, the Saints bring back Brandin Cooks, who they drafted once upon a time, spent last year with the Cowboys. He was the number 20 overall pick once upon a time for the Saints, and now he comes back at 31 years old. Not the old, he's old, James. He's old Brandin Cooks rather than, the old Brandin Cooks. But at the same time, that adds a body in that room. And another move out there, the Patriots, as we mentioned, they are looking to beef up that wide receiver room. And we have Stephon Diggs entering the picture there. He is visiting with the Patriots, and according to Mike Reese, quote, ahead of schedule in recovery from torn ACL. Everybody's ahead of schedule this time of year. We know that, but he's already running at full speed. So that's good. Good for Diggs, and that makes sense. There we go. Check out that tweet.
You need that too. Yep.
He's doing the work. You need that. Happy trails in other news. Brandon Graham, meant to get to this last week, but we ran out of time. Brandon Graham, who spent his entire career with the Philadelphia Eagles, announced his retirement, and here's a little bit from his end of career press conference.
First, I just want to say thank you to everybody already. But y'all know I gave everything I had in this. And I don't have no regrets. That's one thing I tell them young boys. Don't have no regrets.
When I retire from podcasting, hopefully in like 20 years or something, I'm just going to lift that word for word, that press conference. That's what we're going to do. And what I'll do also, because this is the best case scenario, right? For a guy that former first round pick out of Michigan, 2010, spent his entire career with one team record for regular season games played, over 200, third all time in sacks, and 2 championships. And he's sitting at the dais for this press conference, Connor, with a Lombardi on each side of them. The only 2 Lombardis the Eagles have ever won. They both came on his watch. And to top it off, the cherry on top, he gets hurt this year. He makes it back in time to be a part of the game, the blowout of the Chiefs, and he retires on top. In this sport, in any sport, going out on your terms on top is the rarest of all achievements. So good for you, Brandon Graham, going out a champion. It does not happen often.
And I think probably just walking right into Philadelphia's front office. That was the buzz like 2 years ago when people thought he was retiring, that they would create some sort of a role for him and make him some sort of development expert or whatever it is. And that's truly the athlete bingo, where you double up on Super Bowls, you get to retire on top of your game, and then you still have something to do related to football then for the near future, foreseeable future, for the rest of your life. Like, that is true. Like, just a cherry on top.
It. I mean, chef's kiss. You can't end a career on better terms. And all the Eagles fans that listen to this pod that we at times butt heads, but guess what? Like, I don't hate any team. Well, there's one team in the history of the show that I truly hate. It was the Patriots, especially late in that Patriots run. I was bitter and angry that it wouldn't end. There was no one, and including, if you're listening, if you were at the stadium, I think, what was it, Minneapolis, 5 or 6 years ago, whenever it was now, when the Eagles won that first Super Bowl, and it was Brandon Graham that had the strip sack of Brady. That really is when you knew they were going to pull it off. They were going to finally bring the Lombardi. I was celebrating in that stadium for your Eagles. I loved it. I couldn't get enough of that moment. So yes, maybe this current Eagles team, there are elements of it that I'm not the biggest fan of, but they deserve their flowers for what they achieved this year. But that Eagles team, I'll never forget. So many great memories. The excitement in that stadium, Connor. There's Robert Kraft looking sad if you're watching on YouTube. Nothing better. The excitement in that stadium, the buzz in that stadium, when the Eagles were getting over the hump. One of my favorite Super Bowls that I got to cover for that reason. Incredible energy. I remember our friend Colleen Wolfe running into her on the field after the game with the confetti, and she's just in tears, a Philadelphia native. Just a special moment, and Brandon Graham made it happen.
I remember going down to the Patriots locker room because I did the losers for years. I mean, I think I did like 8 straight years of losing locker room. But I remember being struck by the fact that New England had this big display of, for the players to eat, unsauced fried chicken wings. And I was like, I wonder if Bill, ever the literary guy, this was dead birds, right? It was dead birds. And that was like his metaphor for the whole thing. Like, after the game, they were going to consume dead birds, but unfortunately it didn't happen, you know?
And finally in the news, like, nice anecdote. And finally in the news, a new segment that I call Remember the Titans? They sign place kicker Joey Sly. That's all I got. That's the latest edition of Remember the Titans? Is it over for Nick Folk? What a run it would be if it is. Any thoughts, Connor? Or Justin?
One of my favorite things that one of my relatives does when there's just a benign thing that's thrown out and they want to end the conversation, they just say, "Oh, good for you." And then that's it. And like, that's all that came to mind. It's just like, oh, Joey, oh, good for you, Justin. Good for you.
Wait, look at this rap sheet tweet, by the way. We've been on this.
Shark Sports Management.
The Titans are adding a kicker as they are signing Joey Sly, per agent Glenn Schwartzman of Shark Sports Management. Man, Shark Sports getting big pop now too. It's not just the biggest boys in the block. All right, that's what's happening in the news. Pivot. Hey, Via. Man, I'm into this Via product. Love it. Life comes at you fast, and sometimes you need a way to relax, recharge, stay focused, and that's where Via comes in. 500,000 happy customers can't be wrong. Via is changing the game in natural wellness, combining high-quality hemp-derived ingredients with powerful cannabinoids. I got it right, I think, to create real, effect-driven results. Want better sleep, more focused, a little boost in the bedroom, or maybe you just need to chill out because your stress levels are currently at screaming into the void set. That's like sitting in the TNC overlooking the countryside status. Whatever you need, Via has the solution for you. I was never like a weed guy. That's not my whole thing. But at the same time, I have found that Via is a great way as a father of two to kind of come down a little bit at the end of the night and relax. So I do endorse this product, and you should too if it's something that interests you. So if you're 21 or over, treat yourself to 15% off and get a free gift with your first order using our exclusive code HTC at Via, VIIA, hemp.com. Plus, enjoy free shipping on orders over $100. That's VIIAHEMP.com. Via, get into it. All right, let's take a break, and we'll be right back with Albert Breer. Welcome back. Our next guest, holy shit, senior writer covering the NFL for Sports Illustrated, host of SI NFL's The Monday Morning Quarterback NFL Podcast, MMQB, with some guy named Orr.
I love it. This music makes it sound like Clint Eastwood's coming into the saloon. This is great.
It's a Rorschach test. Everyone has a different reaction to it. My favorite is still Kyle Brandt's thinking he was doing a guest spot on Silk Stockings.
This does have like some overnight Cinemax programming vibes to it too, for sure.
Taxi cab confessions.
Yeah, it was Silk Stockings.
Manual in
actually,
space.
not stockings. I never saw it.
Just
Albert
heard about
Breer,
it.
welcome to Heed the Call for the first time.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Big fan.
Big fan of you, Albert. We all go back. We all worked at NFL Media once upon a time during their imperial age, and now here we are.
Simpler times.
Yes, in a different time for them, but for us, we're very excited to have you on. And you. We talked a little bit before you came on. You were on deadline. You've been up, since the middle of the night, cranking out copy for your weekly column, and there you go. Here's the payoff.
I appreciate you exaggerating that too.
It's fine. Here's the payoff, right? It's like, what's the number one story if you go to like Roto World? Right at the top, talking Kirk Cousins and what's next for Kirk Cousins, so potentially slow playing his next move as he navigates his way out of Atlanta. It's the Albert Breer reporting. So why don't we start there, Albert?
Yep.
Because he's like the last domino in all this, right? We're trying to figure out like who's the quarterback of the Giants or the Steelers or the Browns or or any other number of teams. Then there's this one guy who's a decorated veteran coming off kind of a nightmare year. It's a nightmare for everyone down there right now because the Falcons are trying to come to terms. Are we really going to come to grips with the idea of maybe paying that guy $90 million for 13 bad games or whatever it was? How does this all play out? How do you see it? And where's Cousins' camp on this right now?
I think ownership actually plays into it some, Dan, like where I don't think the owner liked the idea of paying $90 million for a single year and 100 over 2 with the insurance he'd give them behind Michael Penix sounded better to him. And, I'm not sure that's the healthiest thing for your young quarterback to have, that in the room. Like you have a bad first month if you're Michael Penix, which would be understandable. Everyone has bumps, could that create an environment that's not conducive for your young quarterback? I think you make that argument. But, really where the Falcons stand right now is, I think that they would want considerable financial relief in a draft pick. Now, how much would they be willing to pay of the $27.5 million he's owed, the fully guaranteed money that's left for this year? I think that's sort of the operative question here. And for Cousins himself, I will say this: this isn't without risk to take this sort of approach, right? Like because if you're him and you say, okay, like I don't want this to happen again. Where like last year I was blindsided by Michael Penix. Being drafted 8th overall, and all of a sudden I found myself in a much different situation than I signed up for. Well, that's fine. Okay, so you're going to wait to see if the Giants or the Browns take Shedeur Sanders, they're in the top 3. The risk is that those teams just decide to move on, and that those teams say like, we can't wait, and we're not going to sit here until the Friday after the first night of the draft to pull off a trade. And then, maybe Russell Wilson or Joe Flacco ends up in one of those places or ends up in each one of them. And then one of those teams takes Shedeur Sanders. That's the risk to me is that like you could be left without a seat when the music stops. So, I think there are some moving pieces here. He definitely wants to start somewhere next year. The Falcons have been made aware of that. But obviously because of the financial piece of this, nothing's gotten done until now. And, I think because of his own feeling that, he wants to wait to see what happens in the draft, there is some chance that he remains in the roster in 2025.
Dan, you brought up before Russell Wilson being the perfect quarterback for the Giants, the only more perfect quarterback in terms of
so
how
true.
the Giants fancy themselves would be Kirk Cousins. But I do think that in terms of his understanding of the league, he's got a great agent too, a former personnel guy.
Is he from Shark Sports Management?
But to constantly be in this position where you are the most coveted asset in a given time, in a given window. Like right now, it's Aaron Rodgers week. I said this to Albert during our taping this morning that I theorized along with Mike Florio that during the Pat McAfee live show next week in Pittsburgh, Aaron Rodgers will walk out on the stage and be announced as the quarterback of the Steelers, and that whole thing is over. And so there's Aaron Rodgers week, and then after that, there's Russell Wilson week, and then after the draft, it's going to be legitimately the Kirk Cousins bonanza. And imagine that,
I mean, Connor, by the way, broke the news to me on the podcast about the McAfee show being in Pittsburgh.
I do like that.
And I've since changed my. At first, I was like, yeah, Rodgers is definitely going to show up. But what would be a more Aaron Rodgers thing would be to show up and then not announce it.
Or
so
that,
like
that
you build
was
the drama
plan.
up and then he leaves and it's like you still have the cliffhanger there.
And the other massive Rodgers move would be that was the plan for him to show up, and then Florio, as happens, ruined it. And then he's like, oh, now I'm not going to do it just because, F that guy. This was supposed to be my moment, and now it's going to sound like I'm just, oh, good idea, Mike. Yeah, the Rodgers of it all. Because here's so you wrote about it this week that he spent a lot of time with the Steelers, met with Khan, met with Tomlin, spent time with Arthur Smith, other coaches. And is it possible Rodgers does the same in a different manner as Cousins, where he plays the game of musical chairs and can end up without one? Or do you think this just ends with him going to Pittsburgh and it's a wrap?
No, I mean, I think the Giants and I almost think he's separate from all of this, right? Just because he's out there. I think the Steelers are waiting for him. And the Giants now have their contingency with Jameis Winston on the roster. So the Giants probably don't have to do anything. They can wait for him. Jameis Winston is going to prevent them from making it work if he wants to go there. I think it's those two or retirement unless the Vikings decide to reverse course on this whole thing. And honestly, I sort of, I mentioned this earlier in our pod, I sort of look at this isn't what the Giants, and Dan, you're a Jets fan, so you could probably help me here. Isn't what the Giants are asking from Aaron Rodgers sort of the same as what the Jets asked 2 years ago, where it's you've got a handful of promising young players in the roster. It looks like if you could plug Aaron Rodgers into it, maybe they're not that far away. They haven't won in a while. So you're basically asking him to come in and lift all boats, right? That's what he was asking. That's what the Jets were asking. That's what the Giants are asking. Whereas I think what the Steelers are asking from him is a little bit different. It's jump on a moving train. And he's got a bunch of guys, nobody's your peer when you're 40 years old in the NFL, but guys who are as close to being his peers as possible. Minkah Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, now DK Metcalf, who's a third contract guy. And maybe he looks at it and says, in Pittsburgh, there are all these guys that are going to be operating with the same sense of urgency as me. And they're not going to be looking at me to kind of lift them up. They're looking at me to be the final piece. I think that's sort of the difference between the two options right now.
Yeah. And it is, being a Jets fan is not easy business. I think you wrote about this too, that he came out of the experience with the Jets, looking more fondly on what Green Bay offered him, which was this franchise security, and it's a professionally run environment, and there's a code that you're going to get to. And even in a down year, things aren't going to fall to hell all around you. And yeah, I think Pittsburgh makes sense. Look at the Steelers. If nothing else, and I say it, Bert, on the show, that they have park themselves in this cul-de-sac of elite mediocrity. But so that's kind of, there's negatives to that, but they're never bad. And Rodgers, I think part of in the back of his mind is I'd like to go out on top like Brandon Graham and do the press conference with the Lombardi on each side of me. But I don't want to go out like things went with the Jets last year, or where I'm just going out in shame and with my tail between my legs. So the Steelers do provide you kind of a safer safety net for how this ending goes as well.
Yeah, and he flat out said it to me last summer. I got to spend some time with him, and he said, I don't about the Achilles. I didn't want to go out like that. Wouldn't it be worse to go out the way this ended versus last year's just an injury, right? Right. This is all. I feel like this is almost worse, right? Because you did come back, and it didn't look good, And I think you still saw flashes of Aaron Rodgers, I had a scout tell me, go back and watch the Jaguars game. So I did, right? When the Jets played the Jaguars at the end of the year, there were probably 5 people watching that game. Maybe you were one of them, Dan. But if you go back and you look at it, he actually looked really good in that game, And so, I could see where he could look at that and say, all right, I know how people are going to look at me now. I know what my legacy is. I have some control over that. I would much rather write a new ending to this story. We'll see what happens. I also think, separate from that if he were completely happy with the options he had in front of him, the Steelers and the Giants, then I don't think the Vikings would have gotten involved the way they did. I think the Vikings' involvement was sort of Aaron, looking for potentially another option that might be out there.
Yeah, I also think about the end of that season 2 weeks later, where he looks like a brittle old man against the Bills. Yeah. And there's two sides of it now, and it's almost like you got to manage expectations. You're just not going to get the old guy anymore. You're going to get the Rodgers that's a little bit up and down. Let's pivot here, Albert. You also talked about Travis Hunter and how at Colorado they really, they put a lot of effort into how do we make this work, and where he spends his time in preparation during the week, and how that perhaps would translate to the NFL. That feels like another situation where you better, wherever he ends up going, go to a place that's has run well, that has a coaching staff that has a defined plan, because I could see that thing going sideways. On the flip side, man, what an exciting, dynamic talent to add to your organization if you could make it work.
I mean, Dan, I can't think of a guy that I'm more excited to talk about down the stretch. You know what I mean? Like, and to kind of look at down the stretch. And, I think it's fascinating because like, when I went and did my initial round of phone calls to kind of like gauge the draft class before the combine, I like to do that to try to like just get a better handle on it. The comps I got on him were, the 3 receiver comps I got were Stephon Diggs, Garrett Wilson, and Devontae Smith. And then the defensive comp I got was Darius Slay. Whoa. Which is insane. If you think about it, this is the same guy. You know what I mean? Like, wow. So, I mean, the cool thing about it, though, I think if you're the Giants or the Browns or the Patriots, and you're thinking about taking him that high, is like your fear when you're using a pick that in that range is obviously that you're going to strike out and you're going to invest all this time into a guy and it's not going to work out. It's almost like you get multiple cracks at getting this right.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like it's going to be much harder to be wrong about this. Now, he may not be what you hope he is, which is like a guy who can do everything, right? But it feels like the floor is raised way up because you're going to get multiple cracks at getting this one right. And to pull off what he pulled off, like I think this is the part that like people don't talk enough about. I mean, you don't even have to ask the football character question with him, right? You know what I mean? Like, because to do what he did at Colorado, like the amount of like conditioning, mental focus, competitiveness, love for football, like you have to have that stuff off the charts to pull off what he pulled off. You know what I mean? Like, so I think this is going to be a really fun one to watch. And so the listeners out there know like what you referenced, Dan, was the way they used him at Colorado, because I don't think the question is game day so much as it is how do you get him ready if he is going to play both ways. They had him do most of his meeting and practice time on defense because they felt like because you're dealing with so much game plan specific stuff on defense and you have to see what the opponent is doing on defense more so than you do on offense. You know, they spent most of the time getting him ready to play corner. And then on offense, like it was basically, we're going to build in a ton of packages for you where we can use you different ways. And then we're going to, if you need it, signal in routes to you from the sideline. So they gave him some help and just kind of like shortening some of the learning curve there during the week because he wasn't in meetings and practice nearly to the degree he was on defense. And when I dug that stuff out and found that out, I was like, wait, so like this guy did this in the Big 12 at Colorado, won the Biletnikoff Award, and is being compared to Garrett Wilson, Devontae Smith, and Stephon Diggs without practicing or meeting much. So it's just like you think about some of the dynamics at work there, and it's really interesting. I can't wait to see what becomes of him.
And I think he's coming into the NFL at the perfect time when you look at teams who have had recent success. Like I remember talking to the Panthers coaching staff before spring ball, and it's like, well, what is your offense going to look like? And the answer was, I don't know. The players are going to tell me what my offense looks like. Or the Lions, when they drafted those defensive backs and talking to Dan Campbell before the season started, what's the defense going to look like? I don't know. We're going to see them out on the practice field and we're going to see what happens. Let's say the Giants take him at 3. You have the luxury of spring ball and even probably part of training camp to say, okay, he fits more into this team, into this organization as a natural corner. So that's what we're going to major in. And then every now and then we'll sprinkle him on offense, or the complete reverse of that. And I think he would probably be more valuable offensively to certain teams, defensively to certain teams. But I think that's the beauty of the NFL now, where it's less rigid. It's less my standard, my goals, all that kind of stuff. It's more like, let's see what he does. And we have a little bit of runway here to figure it out.
Last question, and check out Albert's column where he gets into all these topics in depth. But we want to talk about the Texans because a lot of eyebrows went up when they traded Laremy Tunsil. This is a team that a lot of people looked at their offensive line as a major reason why things went sideways. And some interesting things about DeMeco Ryans and what he saw. Like he's a guy, Albert, that is very happy with the status of the defense and the direction of the defense. But there were some issues beyond just ability that were on his radar on the offensive side. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so like it really, I think he's got like being an ex-player and obviously being part of like a really strong culture in San Francisco. I think D'Amico had a really like defined vision of the culture that he wanted. And I think over the last 2 years, they've established that on defense, and like it's exactly where they want it. And while they've been productive on offense, they didn't really get it to the same level, and they haven't been able to get it to the same level, which is part of why Bobby Slowick is gone and Nick Caley's coming in as the offensive coordinator now. And a huge part of that was the offensive line room got a little toxic last year. And their logic in trading Laremy Tunsil, you can argue whether it was the right thing or the wrong thing, but their logic on it was, well, this room needs to be cleaned out, and we need to just sort of start over in the offensive line room from a culture standpoint. And while Laremy Tunsil's a great player, he was never going to be that guy that was going to be kind of the leader of something like that. He's not the first one in, the last one out. And I think, like when they looked at it, it was like, we can either sell high now and get a lot of assets back for him, or we can have him for this year and then we're not going to extend him and we're right back here next year and he's a year older and maybe, like then what do we do? So I think it was like a recognition that the offensive line room needed work and that they weren't going to extend him. And so it was sort of getting ahead of that. And I mean, look, like now they're taking multiple cracks at it, right? Like Blake Fisher is a guy they drafted out of Notre Dame in the second round, I believe, last year. He's a tackle. They bring in Trent Brown and Cam Robinson, neither of whom are like by any stretch like great workers either, but they're also not being asked to be the torchbearers in that room, right? And they're going to try to figure it out. And I think I respect having the stomach to do something like that, because that's a hard thing to do. And on the flip side of it, look, like I know what Adam Peters looks at and sees there is like, well, Trent Williams wasn't exactly a Boy Scout in Washington, right?
Right.
And then we traded for him in San Francisco and plugged him into the right culture. And what's he been the last 6 years? The best tackle in football. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like on one side, I think you see where Dan Quinn and his group have they feel like they've already like established the culture they need, and Laremy Tunsil can just be a piece. Whereas in Houston, they saw something they needed to fix and had a hard time envisioning Laremy Tunsil being the leader of fixing all of that.
Fair enough. Hey, your partner, Connor.
Yeah.
He stirred up a hornet's nest on the show last week by coming after Nirvana. So I'll ask you, Grateful Dead v. Nirvana. You could only see one. You could only see one artist at their peak. The Dead versus Nirvana. Where does Albert Breer come down?
I mean Nirvana, because I think I'm around the same age as you, Dan, and
yeah.
Kids of and that lost generation that Connor is a part of has no concept of what Nirvana was.
Lost generation.
Nirvana is like something like you sort of had to be there. Like I think their peak was what, 91, right? So I was 11. I think Connor was still in diapers then. And
I was 3. Yeah.
Yeah. So it depends on like the level of potty training you were getting, I guess, whether or not you were in diapers, right?
Wow, there's nothing more dismissive, Connor, than to get hit with, you had to be there, little boy.
But isn't it true though, Dan? Like, because it was so short.
But it's not like Connor was there for like the Jerry Garcia golden era,
but Nirvana was like this, and especially if you were like, I was 11 years old in 91, right? So like Nirvana to me was like this comet that came across the sky. And it, like, if you didn't see it, then while it was going across the sky, it's hard to describe it. It was, I would rather see Nirvana because it was so, and again, like that's probably just my age, right? Like, I was right in that wheelhouse of being that age when that happened.
Wow. When you said
we have lots of age jokes on our on our podcast. To be fair, this is just sort of revenge because usually I'm on the wrong end of those jokes.
Right. And we have Sessler who's on vacation right now, who's in his late to 70s. I think that we have a lot of fun with that as well. So I guess that's
he carries himself like a man of 90. So
so Connor, there you go. That was your colleague Albert's take that you weren't there. You can't understand. So now it makes more sense to me.
I mean, that's what everybody says about me covering football anyway. So, but it's funny when you said Connor and Hornets Nest, Albert's eyes lit up because coming off the coming off the Commanders discussion, I think he caught some shrapnel for my anti-Commanders take. This was coming off of him catching shrapnel for my anti-Buccaneers take a couple years ago, coming off some shrapnel from like my anti-Texans take like 8 years ago.
You know the problem is though is like we put out those videos, like the little clips of our podcast, and it's like, you know, some idiot is like posting like the MMQB podcast hates the Commanders, and all they see, they no one hits play on the video. They just see the picture of me. Like, so.
Trust me, our wonderful producer Justin and I have conversations about our YouTube feed where it's like Dan hates T. Higgins, like a big picture of me like doing double birds at the Bengals logo.
So a cartoon of Dan Hanzus.
All right, Albert, we appreciate the time, buddy. And yes, check out all the great stuff Breer does with SI, including the podcast with Connor. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Anytime you need me, let me know.
There he goes. All right, pivot. How is your bracket doing? Busted already? Yeah. Yeah, St. John's. Guys, come on. Killing me. But that's okay. Because on Underdog, you don't need the perfect bracket to win big. All throughout March Madness, Underdog is adding to the craziness with their college hoops play your way campaigns. Is Syracuse in the dance this year? No. All right. Got to get Mello back.
Or something, yeah. Or not be in Syracuse.
John Wallace? Get John Wallace back?
Like,
give me some more Cuse legends.
Ronnie Cycli?
Oh,
who's the short white dude? Balding-ish?
Short white dude. Balding.
Jerry McNamara?
McNamara?
Yeah, Jerry McNamara from Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Oh, hell yeah.
Scranton legend Jerry McNamara.
Each week, we're dropping a new version where you can earn gimmies, discounts, boosts, and more just by making college basketball picks. Men's or women's. Week 2 goes live this Thursday, and you're only 3 entries away from a gimme pick. So what are you waiting for? Just scan the QR code on your screen to download and play on the Underdog app, or sign up with the code HTC. New users can receive up to $1,000 in bonus credits when they deposit. Make picks, earn promos only on Underdog. That's for our U.S. audience only. Yeah, now that St. John's is out, and I was really into them, and I was tracking them throughout the winter, this is perfect for me because I need a way back into giving a shit about March Madness because I do need that pathway. So, Underdog, once again, saving the day for the old Zeuser.
Similarly, all of my pet projects are out, and I tend to gravitate towards teams much like my Minot State dynasty of old when I was on.
Why not?
Yeah, when I was on PS3, I had this fantasy of like Grand Canyon University, for example. I thought was like Phoenix Online University, and I just loved the idea of this online university just finding like 11 guys to come together and play basketball. And like they practice near the Grand Canyon or something.
Right, like they practice at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. They have this amazing home court advantage.
You're saying you like the underdogs, Connor.
Oh, he's done it again. Mock Madness, baby. All right, before we say goodbye, let's check in with our favorite Israeli NFL insider, Dov Kleiman. Who if you're a fan of this show, we love our Dov content, whoever it's coming from, wherever it's coming from. We've noticed and clocked that he has some new cells on his tweets that just bring us a lot of entertainment. I don't know if anybody else is entertained by it, but he the call is. Here's some just from the last couple of days. Let's start with, and the whole key is what the first word is before the colon. Here we go. Awful, colon. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are racing their new $250,000 Lamborghinis all over Miami, potentially putting many civilians' lives at risk. Triple emoji of a man that's very concerned. What do you grade this on the Dov scale of greatness, Connor?
We went from like praising 24-time accused
we'll get to that. Don't worry.
Criminal Deshaun Watson to being like, oh, how awful is this that they went like 70 miles an hour on the Miami thruway? Like this. Have you ever been to Miami during drive time traffic? Do you know how hard it is to get your car above 80 miles an hour? They're not going to kill anybody. Relax.
They're even showing in the videos that accompany this. They're like sitting in not standstill traffic, but they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
All right, next one. Oh, I love this one. Uh-oh, colon. Patrick Mahomes looks to be in the best shape of his career as fans speculate his, quote, dad bod is gone. The rest of the league is in trouble next season. Triple emoji of the man with his mouth open like the kid from Home Alone. What do you grade this on the Dov scale? For me, this is almost a 10 out of 10 with the photo of like a grinning Mahomes in tight pants on the golf course.
It is, and what we're really seeing from Mahomes here as is something that I used to struggle with too. Is if the wind hits you in one of those dry fit shirts the right way, you look like the guy on the cover of those the romance novels at the supermarket, and then if it hits you the wrong way, you look like a sumo wrestler.
Yeah, it's like, oh, man titties alert.
Yeah, so Mahomes had a good day. I don't think the dad bod thing with him is ridiculous, by the way, but that's another argument for another day. Anyway, 10 out of 10.
All right, next. Oh, here we go. Dog, D-A-W-G, colon, DK Metcalf is locked in this offseason, already working out in Steelers gear. Metcalf has fully embraced the Pittsburgh lifestyle. What, working out? What does that even mean? What is the Pittsburgh? I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 10. Dov could do better. Israel weeps.
And I just want to add, because there's no other time to talk about it. Last week, clips of him going viral playing basketball surfaced. DK Metcalf, were you aware of this?
I think I might have seen that quickly. Yeah.
He was playing in a pickup game, and everyone's like, can you believe this? And I was like, yes. He's a professional fucking athlete. His job is to be in incredible shape and to be good at sports. If he sucked at basketball, he would have sucked at football. And, with a couple different, outliers here. But if you're good at sports, you're supposed to be good at sports. Why are we surprised when JJ Watt can hit a softball or like Odell Beckham is good at golf? Like you are.
But was it more about like, why is he risking an ACL injury on the court?
No. It was like, no, the clip was DK Metcalf could totally play in the NBA. And in the clip, he is the tallest person by a country mile and looks to be playing against, just your hobbyists, your weekend 5-on-5 guys. So this is, it's not like he's doing something exceptional, and he should be destroying everybody else in that gym.
All right, and finally, one more, as you alluded to earlier. I don't know what's going on in Tel Aviv right now with Dov and Deshaun Watson, but they are in cahoots. Elite, colon. Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson is, quote, determined to make a comeback as he recovers from his second Achilles tear. Cleveland went 9-10 with Watson as QB1. This, which is funny. This is the second tweet in 4 days from Dov where he is just gassing up Deshaun Watson at the highest levels imaginable.
Concerning, colon, operator of Israeli Twitter account seems to have brain bleed.
Very fun.
This has to, I mean, we've debated this before, but it's almost like he knows or they know that someone is on to them, and they have, I would like to think, embraced the highest art form here. Like, I think they are at peak, like 2014 Twitter, where it was, you have people totally befuddled as to whether you're serious or not, and you are just a comedic mastermind. That is what I choose to believe at this point.
And finally, before we say goodbye, Connor, it's premiere week over on patreon.com/heedthecall. Hit it, Justin. It came from the subreddit.
Nicely done, Justin.
Yes, it will premiere on Friday in place of the Friday Fun Show this week. So be on the lookout for that as I, with the help of Justin, and occasional drop-ins from people like Connor and Mark and anyone else in the show's orbit, we looked into what people are talking about over on Reddit, the Heed the Call subreddit, both the positive and the negative, and also, other places in social media where the show is discussed. It's a real navel-gazing look at our world, and it happens once a month on the Patreon starting on Friday. Connor, if you ever want to settle any scores with people who cross you, which I know is a part of your DNA and I love it about you, you jump on anytime you want on It Came From the Subreddit.
I was going to say book me for like the first 4 because I have I have posts on that thing that have just been eating me alive for the last 4 months.
Maybe we'll have Justin, maybe we could have a monthly segment where we throw it to Connor to get after something or somebody. That could work.
Yeah, we should.
It checks a box for everybody. All right, good stuff. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll be back again later in the week. We did it once at the tail end of the regular season. It was a lot of fun where it was Dan, Connor, and then our friends from The Athletic, Michael Sean Dugar and Jordan Rodriguez. We'll be back as a foursome again on Thursday's show, so make sure you are there for that. All right. Connor, anything to add before we say goodbye?
It was wonderful today. It was like it's like when you introduce your college friends to your high school friends, having Albert come over. It was a good time.
Yes,
I really
that's
enjoyed it.
very well said. And thank you, yes, to Albert Breer for joining us. All right, until next time, heed the call.